Hey everybody, do you want to know how you could win $10,000 in a day? Well, we're about to tell you, so pay attention. I'm Shannon Somerville here with Tyler Wiemann from LineStar, and Tyler recently just won a contest, a daily fantasy baseball contest on Draftkings for $10,000. First of all, congratulations.
Thank you.
You're going to tell us how you did it, so everybody take notes, pay attention. First of all, how did you choose the contest itself?
All right. Well, first of all, I chose the contest because it's kind of my strategy every single day as far as the contests I pick. I do two different contests. I do the $4.20 max and then the $121 single entry contest on Draftkings. I believe it's called the Battery. The Battery is the one that I won the $10,000 off. Now, I like that contest because it isn't only a single entry contest. It has, I think roughly, it's usually right around 550 entries or so.
Okay.
So I wanted the smaller field. It's a little easier to win and can just kind of maximize those profits if you're only playing one entry.
Okay. So next question, of course, is how do you go about doing the research to pick the best possible lineup for daily fantasy baseball? I know everybody probably has their own unique ways of going about it, but what's your method?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one thing is everybody has to kind of have a system to go through.
Sure.
And start kind of going through the checklist to figure out what works for you and what doesn't. For me, I personally always start with the weather. I look at all the weather for the games. It's kind of why we do it on our pod every day. First thing is the weather because it is very important. If it's hot out, there's going to be more runs. If it's cold out, there's less runs. Winds, they're all the variants. And also, of course, rain or snow today.
Yeah.
So that's absolutely my starting point. Next, I kind of look where the field is going. I try and figure out where ownership is going to go. And this is really important because you're trying to figure out where you can leverage the field.
Right.
Where the number one thing is that if I'm scoring points that the field isn't, they're way more valuable and compared to a guy if he's 40% owned and 40% of the field is moving with me with those points. So,
now, are these tools or things that you're finding on LineStar specifically?
Yes. Weather, absolutely. The ownership, we actually have new ownership coming out very soon. So that's what I used on Friday and what I've been using for the last few days for our pod. So that is one key thing. There's a bunch of ownership projections around the industry.
But it's interesting that you say ownership is so big because I feel like oftentimes that's something that kind of gets a little bit overlooked in that you're just trying to get the best players for the best value, but you're not so much thinking about, okay, what are other people doing?
Totally. And it really is a big leverage point. You need to kind of figure out on every slate where that leverage point is that you want to attack. On this slate, I was kind of on an island as far as my hitters. San Francisco, I think the highest owned guy on San Francisco that I had was like 5%. And it's a 500 person contest. So, I'm really battling 25 people or so there versus 500 if San Francisco does well. So picking out those leverage spots with ownership is really key.
And then looking at the particular players and lineups, are you looking for any particular statistics or how they go head to head, or what are some different things you look at?
So next, after I look at ownership, I usually go through the pitchers' player cards. And I'll go through one by one to see the player cards. I always start with the highest owned pitchers.
Okay.
See if the stats that I'm seeing match up with the ownership. On Friday, we had Carlos Rodon, who was super high owned, but literally everything followed that, and he ended up being the best pitcher on the slate. I didn't have him in my lineup, but
and you still won.
I still won. Exactly. So using that and kind of just making sure the stats are lining up with the ownership.
Sure.
a lot of the times you'll see a player who, yeah, maybe they're underpriced, but there's usually a kind of a reason as far as maybe they've been walking a lot of batters, or maybe like there's something the field is usually overlooking, and I try and look at that.
Okay.
So the high owned players, I try and find reasons to fade them. And then with the lower owned guys, I'm going through to see who has the upside that can match some of the high owned guys.
And on the site, are you liking are you keeping mental note of who you're liking and where they fit into your budget?
Absolutely. So at this point, I'm kind of just scrolling through to kind of see who I like and making mental notes of it. Later in my process, I will go through and actually like players or raise a projection or do what I have to do to try and get more of them in lineups.
And then how else do you kind of optimize the best possible lineup?
Yeah, so after going through the player cards, I look at the daily matchups for the pitchers, for pitchers and hitters, try and see the BVP data, different kind of data for all the hitters. And that kind of really starts to critique and point me in the direction I want to go with my stacks.
Okay.
As well as obviously the pitchers. So in that process, after I'm done with that, I really start kind of liking and moving things around. I'll run the optimizer just how it is with all my settings kind of set up and just see what I'll get off the basis.
Sure.
And then kind of adjust projections to try and push more guys or more teams up that I want.
So when you're doing that whole process, how much of it is you trying to get the best player projected, and how much of that is you trying to figure out what everyone else is doing and thinking about that?
Yeah, so there's definitely kind of a yin and yang to it, and like a nice balance that you want to find. So it's kind of the reason why we have formatted our podcast with the chalk reports, saying high owned, say low owned, because the high owned guys are that for a reason. It's usually industry wide. Those guys are the highest projected for their salary.
Sure.
So to totally fade every high owned guy is kind of suicidal. Right. Not to be that dramatic, but like if you fade everybody, it's going to be a very low chance that you win day in and day out. And how I play, I fade some of it, and I kind of try and pick my points.
So let's take a look at your lineup.
We can start with Dylan Cease, and the whole reason I picked him is he had just as much as upside as Rondon, which he ended up scoring about 5 points less. His ownership, however, was 30% less owned. So to me, I took that bet because I thought there was some decent leverage there. Had Rondon, only scored 25, which is still a great game, I still would have been 2 points over everybody. He ended up going to 32, which obviously is more than Cease. However, the leverage as far as that ownership was important to me.
And what I'm looking at here, I'm seeing Mike Trout and Crawford, same score, 14. How did you go about those decisions right there? Because I know one of them is pretty high price.
Yeah. So with the decision, as far as baseball, lineup construction is a huge thing. So with baseball, I am trying to figure out which stacks I want. I pretty much always do either a 5-3 or 4-4, meaning 5 people from one team, 3 from another, or 4 and 4.
Okay.
When I made this lineup, it was actually originally 5-3. I didn't have Walsh, and I had Brandon Belt for San Francisco. So the lineup was going to be 5 Giants, 3 Angels. But I decided to change that because of the run total for the Angels. The Angels that day had the second highest implied total.
Okay.
Whereas the Giants were one of the lowest implied totals on the slate. The whole reason I liked them, though, is because they were good against that side of pitcher. But I did not want to force that in such a small field slate when I already knew I was getting different enough.
And so you went heavy Angels, and it wow, did it pay off for you?
Yeah. So I ended up going 4-4 with Angels and Giants, and Angels are really the side that kind of made it happen. The Giants, I kind of got lucky. They only had 4 runs, but it was all home runs and all guys that I had.
Right.
So
that helps.
Yeah.
Little luck helps, but if you put yourself in a position to be able to make that luck count for something.
Absolutely. And I mean, variance has to kind of bounce your ways in these. Like the best you can do is put yourself in a position to win.
Exactly.
And then hope everything falls your way.
Now, when you look at other people who play daily fantasy, what are the biggest mistakes that you see?
So with every sport, it's all about lineup construction. So with baseball, there's a huge amount of correlation in every lineup between hitters, pitchers, and all that. Correlation with the hitters and the batting orders is very important to pick. So in baseball, let's say on Friday night, I think it was 11 games or something like that. You have nine batters per game, and it's a huge amount of players. It is going to be so hard to pick out the 9 top hitters on that slate.
Right.
However, if you pick out a team that does really well, it's a lot easier there, and you're only getting 1 or 2 things right instead of 9.
I see.
So the strategy there is, use your correlation and go with it.
Well, some great advice from you. Congratulations on the 10K.
Thank you.
And now all of our viewers can go and win some money as well. And if you do, be sure to comment below on our YouTube page. And remember, all these stats and analytics are available to you. You can just go get them at linestarapp.com. Download the LineStar app and follow us on Twitter as well. And if you don't already, be sure to watch the On Deck podcast. Every day, Tyler goes over the very things that won him this contest on Friday. So be sure to watch. And if you watch us on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe just to keep up with all the latest and all of our content that we're coming out with lately. And best of luck to you in all your daily fantasy contests. And like I said, if you win, make sure to comment below. Or if you have any more questions, just feel free to comment below. We'll see you next time.